All right, everyone, good afternoon, and thank you for attending our West conference here. AFCEA and U.S. Naval Institute are always honored to host the CIO West Coast Conference in conjunction with West. And we appreciate you all being here with us today and joining us at this wonderful event. I am Paul Fredenberg. I'm the Executive Vice President for National Security and Defense at AFCEA International. And it's my pleasure to introduce this afternoon's session, which is a fireside chat with Ms. Jane Rathbun, the Department of the Navy Chief Information Officer, and Ms. Ann Schuman, Department of the Navy Principal Cyber Advisor. Now, facilitating this session today is Tony Platter, the Department's Chief Information Security Officer. Now, Tony reports directly to the CIO on the effectiveness of the department's cybersecurity risk management program. So effectively, he will be interviewing his boss. So Tony is a retired U.S. Army military IT professional, and I had to throw that in there because I'm also in the Army, and I wanted to know that the Army is supporting the Navy here at this event. So thank you for that, Tony. He joined the civilian service in 2015, and prior to his civilian service, he accumulated 13 years in industry experience as a senior lead technologist for a top defense IT consulting firm. So please join me in a very loud and thunderous warm welcome for Mr. Platter, Ms. Rathbun, and Mrs. Schuman.
So again, I'd like to welcome everybody. I will be interviewing my boss, but more importantly, interviewing two tremendous leaders today. I think you're going to get a lot of this session. Things I'd like you to know is that we will leave time for questions. This will be an engaging conversations, and we'll get to the why and what we're doing when we talk about managing cybersecurity as a shared portfolio. But before we do that, I would like to note that both leaders have led publishing strategic visions. For the PCA, it's the cyberspace superiority vision, and for the CIO, it's the information superiority vision 2.0 that we talked much about yesterday. So both strategic visions include the secure. Secure is part of the ISV portfolio and a very part that I am focused on leading. So some in the audience may not be aware of the division of cyber responsibilities between the Chief Information Officer and the Principal Cyber Advisor. So this is a good opportunity for me to allow them talk about the responsibilities and their equities. So we'll start with the PCA, and I'll ask, can you describe how the cyberspace from your individual perspectives all work together? And to help the conversation, I'll go ahead and put up the PCA slide that talks about their strategic pillars. So at this time, I'd welcome Ms. Ann Marie Schuman.
All right, thank you very much. This is my first West, so really excited to be here and talk about our shared vision for cyber. But as Tony said, the PCA is a newer office, and it's not one that really has an equivalent in the private sector. So I think when folks hear CIO, you kind of know what to expect. When folks hear PCA, what the heck is that? So a little bit about what the PCA was. So my mission, the mission of my office, is to enable maritime dominance through cyberspace. That is very broad, and intentionally so. The PCA's office needs to be able to look at where cyber exists within the Department of the Navy, wherever that is, and ensure that all its components are working together to enable that maritime dominance. Specifically, I've got 3 priorities that I've focused my office on, and they are captured in our cyberspace superiority vision, and those are secure, survive, and strike. So what are we securing? We're securing our defense critical infrastructure. Those are our ports and our other facilities without which we cannot conduct our vital missions. We're focused on surviving cyber attacks afloat, and I would also include subsea and aloft as well in that. and the weapons systems that are on those platforms as well. And finally, striking with a ready cyber mission force. So that is a unique part of the PCA portfolio, which is the policy and the resources to ensure that the cyber operations force is appropriately manned, trained, and equipped. And the way that my office does this is through exercising sort of three broad authorities that were given to us through Congress. Implementing the cyber strategy, so that's both the Department of Defense cyber strategy and also the Department of Navy's cyber strategy, which is a shared equity document between the PCA and the CIO. Certifying the adequacy of the cyber activities budget, so this is cyber operations, cybersecurity, and having that conversation with our Navy leaders about these priorities and how we are postured against those priorities. Where are we taking unnecessary risk or undue risk? And finally, advising the Secretary of the Navy, the Commandant of the Marine Corps, and the Chief of Naval Operations on all cyber matters, which is, again, shared responsibility for Jane and I. So in describing that, you'll probably hear as Jane moves to her ISV 2.0, quite a lot of overlap. And that's fine. The information environment is a huge space that requires a number of players to come together and cover. So we don't view this as a competitive relationship, but one in which that we have to cooperate in order to make sure that we are delivering the best cyber secure networks, the best capabilities for our warfighters. I'll turn it over to you. Oh.
Can you all hear? Okay. I cannot hear. This is a crazy closer. I'm getting the closer. Usually I don't have a problem being heard, so. But thanks for that beginning part, for describing the PCA. By the way, we share an office. We're like 4 doors down from each other, and so there really is no daylight between the PCA and the CIO on cyber matters, which is great because neither of us have a big team. And so we can be a force multiplier by working together, and that's what we have chosen to do. And as Emery talked about what her portfolio includes, we shifted from ISV 1.0 to ISV 2.0. Our pillar was defend, and we shifted to secure because we recognize that defend is only really one piece of what a CIO has to do in order to ensure cybersecurity. And so in addition, we really have to think through all aspects of the life cycle from a cybersecurity perspective and in making sure that we're enabling our cyber operators to be successful, mostly in the defending and securing element, not so much the hunt mission and things like that really fall more on the mission force side. But we have scoured our documents, we have scoured all the documents given to us, and there is definitely overlap in our portfolio, and so want to make sure we make the most of that. And so in ISV 2.0, is that slide up, Tony? Yeah. Okay. In ISV 2.0, we have 4 key initiatives, and the first one is one that was directed by the DoD, really by the federal government, but by DoD CIO, and that is to get to zero trust. And get to zero trust in our networks by 2027, and then get to zero trust throughout our ecosystem, all of our weapon systems, soon thereafter. And that is not going to be an easy thing for the Navy. We have carriers, and we have submarines, and we have aircraft, and these things are hard to cyber secure, and what does it mean to be cyber secure? And so it is a team sport between the two of us. So moving to zero trust, our second big initiative in the cyber in the secure portfolio is cyber ready. And you might have heard us talk about cyber ready before, but I am the authorizing official for the Department of Navy. We delegate that responsibility down to the services to execute, but we drive the policy there, and we recognize that the ATO process is cumbersome, compliance-based, and doesn't guarantee that we're cyber secure. And so our Cyber Ready initiative has been going on for about 2 years now, and we still have more to do. We've made great progress. We've got a lot of tools out there that we're experimenting with. we are really shifting the dialogue there away from compliance to earning the right to operate every day. So demonstrating in your systems, whether it's a network or a weapon system, that you can do active threat assessment, that you can do continuous monitoring, that you can evaluate risk on a daily basis, and that you're producing and demonstrating this for the cyber operators so that they can actually see the information too and help make a risk decision about your capability. Big, important initiative. There's going to be a lot happening in that area this year. Our third area is how we work with our DIB partners and making sure that they're secure. We lose a lot of information through exfiltration from our DIB partners. Some of them are so small they really can't afford to exist and to do cybersecurity, and so figuring out how we can help them achieve outcomes and do it in a secure way is a big part of Tony's portfolio. Communicating with small business all the way up to the large business. Today, myself and my deputy had a great conversation with the aviation community about some initiatives to better information share, better collaborate in a more secure way. More of that kind of activity is going to be necessary to reduce the impact that data exfiltration has on our ecosystem. And then finally, our last area in ISV 2.0, which is really very much a shared space. And by the way, all of those areas, there are things that Anne-Marie and I talk about and collaborate on together. But what we both realized is that the big cultural shift that needs to occur in the Department of Navy is treating cybersecurity really as a holistic capability portfolio that has very understood mission sets and processes and data requirements, and has systems, and that those systems are not one-off by program, by every program in the department, which is really how we do business today. Every program is responsible for cybersecurity, and what that results in is a land of 1,000 blooms on how you're going to solve cybersecurity, and no integration or interoperability, and no thought put to the fact that the cyber operations community is a small community too, and they need to have visibility. And so how do we architect things going forward? For example, cloud. How do we make cloud visible to our cyber operators? Well, it's not by everybody owning their own cloud platform. It is about strategically architecting the cloud ecosystem so that everybody has access and can get into it and do their business, but they aren't all trying to command and control their own thing. And so that there has to be more of that kind of effort and activity. And the only way to get to that is to really treat cybersecurity as a capability portfolio, manage that way, talk about it that way, invest in it that way, align activity from the execution and the operations and sustainment all the way through the design and development. I'm going backwards in the life cycle. The design and development of future systems. What can we build once, use often? All of those things need to be talked about in a forum that brings together the cyber community, the acquisition community, the resource sponsors, and the fleet to really make smart choices and drive a cybersecurity portfolio approach that gets us to green and security faster than it would if we just all did our own thing. And so Anne-Marie and I have had our first kickoff meeting, and it was the idea was well received by our leadership. We've got work to do. We're just learning every day how much work we have to do to be cyber secure. Cybersecurity has to drive practically every decision we make in this space, in this IT space.
No, that's great. So you're giving a lot of background on starting to get into what really drove us to add. So the big key is, as we went from, this was something new. This was not part of ISV 1.0. So as we went to 2.0, as Ms. Rathbun alluded to. So Ms. Schumann, would you like to add to that when we start thinking about the why before we kind of move to what's next? You want to talk about the why from your perspective of the principal cyber advisor?
Yeah. So I think Jane said a lot on the why, but I think one of the critical things that you touched on was just how siloed we can get, right? Each office has sort of its own mandate. It's so easy to get head down on our individual missions and to not pick ourselves up and really look at a problem holistically. Because in any of the topics that we tackled in that first meeting, there were intelligence community equities in there. There were operational equities. There were, RDA, so research and engineering and acquisition equities in these problems. And so it's even beyond sort of the core cyber community of PCA and CIO. It is bringing in all those other offices as well, from the acquisition community, from the intelligence community, from the resourcing community and the requirements community, to make sure that we are holistically looking at these issues end to end. And I think driving those solutions in a way that's holistic from the start. One of the other things that I tend to see in the cyber community is this focus on technology, and sometimes we forget about the users of that technology, right? Whether that's civilian or uniform personnel. How are they going to get trained on this? Are they going to be able to use it in the operational environment that they're going to encounter? Right, so the types of things that may work afloat in sort of a day-to-day basis may not work in a denied, disconnected environment in conflict. How do we plan for both the day-to-day and the crisis and conflict scenario, and make sure that's reflected not only in the technology, but in our people as well, the types of people we're recruiting, how we're training them, and how we're supporting them.
Ms. Rathbun, Ms. Schumann just alluded to this whole idea of a float. We're aware of the differences now when we talk about ashore versus some of the challenges we have to account for, whether it's we're talking about communications or whether we're talking about just availability. So how do you see us in tackling this and some of the things we need to think about when we think about shared portfolio?
Yeah, I think that was probably a big reason that drove us to create this portfolio steering group was we just see a lot of initiatives coming out of programs and coming out of the resource sponsors that may not be necessarily holistic yet in thought about how we need to treat, what does the ConOps of cybersecurity afloat look like? What capabilities do we need? How do people need to be trained? Like right now, we depend on our ITs to do a lot of the cybersecurity afloat, but not necessarily with all the tools that they should have. And so this was an opportunity to allow those things to bubble up from the fleet, from the cyber operators. Are we aligned correctly from a people perspective? Are we aligned correctly from understanding all of the capabilities that we need to have to do cybersecurity afloat, disconnected and connected? Our move to leveraging things like proliferated low Earth orbit make us more connected, changes the cybersecurity activity on a ship, and so we have to take that into account. Allows us to potentially do some things from ashore that we would not have maybe been able to do before. So I think that there is work to be done here in really understanding and defining effectively what the cybersecurity operations on ships need to look like, and then driving process, people, data, technology changes as appropriate.
I think you hit on the key word when you said operations, and earlier you talked about Cyber Ready and that initiative. And I think one of the critical pieces on afloat cyber is really ensuring that cyber readiness is not a compliance checklist, but is part of ship readiness, right? And part of an operational practice, not just, it's something the ITs do and we can set it aside in this box over here, but really understanding how that operational practice of cybersecurity afloat affects the entire risk to mission of a ship.
Yeah.
So thanks. So you had mentioned that we had the meeting back in December. We had a lot of important stakeholders to attend. So when you think about this and the things you want the audience and our participants to think about, how can other organizations, how can the audience, what should they be thinking about, what should industry be thinking about, and how can they contribute?
Okay, I'll start. So we are not going to go to war without our industry partners. You are strategic partners in everything that we do. And we want to hear about all of your good ideas that you have in this space because there's opportunity to improve how we do things. The cyber operators, our Networkcom, NCDoc, and I'm never going to get it right, Marforce Cyber Command, they are talking to you all about the things that you can do for them, and then how do we translate that into capability that we can use department-wide or service-wide, but understand our mission, understand our problem sets, understand that yes, we have to work in a MCON or disconnected state, and that the tooling and the capabilities that you bring to us need to meet our mission use cases. Knowing that and then understanding how we're doing business today and offering better solutions for how we can go forward in this space.
And I would add to that, one of the things I would ask our industry partners to think about, and this is probably less an issue on sort of those pure cyber capabilities side, but for the builders of things, whether that's weapon systems or other widgets, we have to move away from this rip and replace mentality or, hey, we're just going to wait till the ship comes into availability because the threat moves too fast for that. And so our defenses have to be equally agile. And in order to enable that, we have to have capabilities that can keep pace with threat, whether that means over-the-air updates or things that sailors at the operator, maintainer level can do themselves without that significant tech assist. That is going to be really key, I think, to moving to that cyber-ready, responsive, agile, defensive posture that we need, and that's something that that really we have to have our industry partners help with.
I think I would just add one more thing to that is that if you are building things, cyber ready is all about designing it in up front. Design your cybersecurity into your capability up front, because that is going to make us feel much more comfortable working with you. That we know that you've thought about cybersecurity and in the products that you're delivering to us.
So that's great. I promise to make sure we leave time for questions. So if you have a question, or this is a fireside chat, this is an opportunity to engage with two senior leaders. If you walk toward the microphone, then I'll know you have a question, and we'll be glad to welcome that. In the meantime, I'll give a couple nuggets to our speakers so they can continue, but we welcome folks moving toward the microphone. One of the important things when we start talking about managed cybersecurity shared portfolio. All right, we have one to go.
Yes, you invited. Is there a switch here? Can y'all hear me? Yeah, you invited, we came. Hi, ladies, Rob Anderson, IBM. I know we're talking a lot about cyber ready in the last 2 years, and I'm involved in some programs right now, particularly supporting the PMW, and now we're dealing with IATTs and so forth. Can you explain how the cyber ready process is being implemented by the PEOs and the programs that are being procured and delivered?
Sure. So we are in the pilot phase with many programs. We have issued a memorandum that offers a carrot and a carrot. Come and be part of the cyber ready piloting, and you don't have to do an ATO. That is the carrot. It's a pretty darn big carrot.
Can I spread that memo around?
Sure. And so what does that mean? That means that you have to actively, as we said, demonstrate. Our overarching objective is to move to approving a process versus approving a document. And so what do I mean by that? So there are several mission domain enclaves in the Department of Navy. Ships would be one, combat weapon systems would be another. Well, ships are actually made up of many enclaves, but let's say combat weapon system, and they are very active partners with us right now. What does your cyber ready process need to look like for the capabilities you're delivering? And then how do we make that your responsibility from design forward? That you are showing us what we've said all along is demonstrate to us how you're doing adversarial threat assessment on a continuous basis that you're continuously monitoring, that you can and testing, and that you are that you can demonstrate risk to your capability, and that the cyber operator feels comfortable with how you're doing your cyber ready process. You walk us through that, we will approve your process. Another example would be I am ready to give Flank Speed, the platform, their cyber ready designation because they are zero trust compliant 100%, almost 100%. They missed one that we have a mitigation for. And so they are living and breathing active cybersecurity management daily. And that is what we're looking for in these processes. And so once your process is designated, you're going to be subject to inspection just like you are today, but you're not going to do an every 3-year assessment because you should be catching things daily in your process. That makes sense?
Yes, ma'am, it does. Thank you.
So get your PEO behind the idea, whatever PEO you're working with.
Yeah. And
all 3 PEOs.
I think one of the great benefits of that, I mean, spending a lot of time looking at weapon systems and critical infrastructure, zero trust may look very different for those things and the types of controls that we apply and what we can do there. So I don't want, an ATO for this and an ATO for that. What is the process, as you said? If you have a good process, then the eaches are up to that owner, right, the system owner, to say, I understand how I'm going to cyber secure my, whatever, weapon system X, as opposed to us having to reinvent the wheel for each of these different environments or enclaves. So there's really a great efficiency in what's coming with Cyber Ready.
And then all the data coming from all of those mission enclaves is going to end up in the cyber operators ecosystem, their data analytic fabric, so that they can do deeper learning on the information that they've received and have a better opportunity, a better insight to the entire ecosystem of our naval and Marine Corps capabilities versus, again, program by program, trying to maintain an ATO.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
I'm going to try this. I'm a little bit short. So ladies, hi. I'm Ted Perry. A lot of folks know me as Juice. I'm the principal cyber advisor at Infinity Labs. I have a kind of a two-parter, one statement, one question. Statement is as such, as my team and I were writing JP312, and then we were also jumping down to the Army to assist with FM312 and their ATPs.
I'm having a hard time hearing you.
Yes, ma'am. Sorry about that. So as my team and I were charged with writing JP312, and then also jumping down to the Army to assist with the FM and the ATPs, we envisioned a need to have a CIO-like entity paired with a principal cyber advisor that dealt more with weapons systems application, people, processes, and tools in the warfighting environment. Received a lot of pushback, did not get received very well. So I just wanted to thank you all for making this a reality. I'm glad to see this come to fruition just about 8 years later. Question for you, if you had a bumper sticker that needed to be carried out across the whole of government, across the JCS and our sister services, when it comes to making this pairing and making it relevant, is there a way that you would carry that message forward?
Oh, I don't know that we've thought of a bumper sticker yet, but now we're going to have to come up with one and put it on a T-shirt or something. I don't know. We can brainstorm live here, I guess. Maybe.
I think that makes a great raffle idea, or a great vote idea.
A vote idea, right? We'll put them up there and people can vote. Maybe just something like cyber operations are operations, right? Or cyber, I don't know. That would be my first thought, but do you have a contender?
I would entertain suggestions,
From
but
the audience?
cyber is core, right? Cyber is core to everything we do. And if it is, again, not driving our architecture, the warfighter and the cyber operator have to be in the conversation about how we're going to maneuver data, because it's got to be secure. Our tagline for ISV 2.0, or our objective, is securely move data from anywhere to anywhere for decision advantage. We cannot do that if the secure is part of that, data maneuverability. So it has to really be cyber is core. Yeah.
All right, we've got 2 contenders. If other people have bumper sticker ideas, you can write them down, pass us like the little slip of paper, and we'll have a vote or something afterwards.
Sounds good. Thank you very much, guys. I appreciate it.
So we're still open for questions. Please move toward the mic. I know we kind of touched upon that zero trust and all the challenges as we go forward. We know the mandate says we're supposed to be done by 2027. Ms. Raplin alluded to that's a lot. So from your perspective, the PCA and the CIO, how do you handle the priorities, right? When we're ultimately going to be asked, did we comply? How do we handle the priorities in the environment we're in?
Great question, Tony. Thanks for the softball. So, we have said when we were asked by the Navy and Marine Corps leadership, how are we going to get after this? We're like, well, for networks, we don't have a choice. You got to get your networks zero trust aligned. And that should be easier, not easy, but easier than trying to zero trust a combat weapon system, a missile. But what we have said to the rest of the organization, start thinking now about how you're going to get to zero trust, but start with the things that we think offer the most security. Identity and access management would be one of those things where how are you going to handle identity and access management to your system? We want to get to data level control, so doing things in your systems that allow for security at the data level will be also something that we would be driving or encouraging.
And so I think where my office is picking up the zero trust piece, even though it wasn't explicitly stated in the priorities, under that defense of critical infrastructure, we have a number of facilities control systems, right? So I think the IT world is leaps and bounds ahead of where we are with control systems, cybersecurity, but we recognize that gap and we are trying to get after it. So just like there is a zero trust framework for our IT that lists those basic and then the advanced controls, within the Department of Navy, we are working on a similar framework which will have a set of advanced or basic and advanced controls for control systems. Our desire is to see that framework adopted by the DoD CIO office so that we have a department-wide framework for control systems. I don't know if we'll get there by 27. Like I said, I think we're a little bit behind, but that's the deadline we have to drive through. We have to drive to, and so if you're interested in reading more about that framework, it's called Mosaics. You can take a look at that. But really thinking about how we take the lessons learned from Zero Trust for IT, where we can apply it on the OT side, and where it's simply going to be different, because there are some significant differences there. And then once we've got those sort of basic Zero Trust controls implemented, how do we bring those OT systems into a secure enclave and make sure, Jane harped on the data piece, right? How do we make sure that the data, including the cybersecurity data, is visible to all of the cyber defenders who need to get access to that so that we can ensure the safety of those critical installations?
The Department of Navy is leading in many areas. When we think about DoD, we talked yesterday about the work that has been done in flank speed. We talked about the work that's been done in enable identity service, our leaning forward, our modernization. Do you see this as another effort, this managed cybersecurity as a shared portfolio? Is this an opportunity to lead and look at things differently?
I mean, absolutely. I mean, everyone is thinking about cybersecurity. I just want to harvest that knowledge from all these different sources and really think holistically, put together a plan for cybersecurity, as a ConOps, whatever you want to call it. Not that we don't have ConOps for these things, but really understanding end-to-end how cybersecurity needs to be managed, needs to be operated, is our kind of overarching goal. And then related to that is, resources are not endless. So effectively using resources and optimizing our cybersecurity ecosystem is the second piece of that, to get after.
Yeah, and to your point about managing resources effectively, I think one of the critical pieces that I would put out there for our industry partners who might hear that and hear deduplication of effort and think, oh, less investment. I think that is absolutely not the case, right? When we streamline how we how we do cybersecurity and make sure there's not that duplication of effort, I actually think it leaves more room for investing in innovation, right? The idea is to take back those dollars that aren't being effectively spent and then work with our partners in this shared capability portfolio and say, okay, now we have that one extra dollar to spend. Where is the next place that we can invest it to drive ourselves forward continually? And rather than having everybody simply sort of fighting for, their pretty baby, it's across the whole ecosystem. Where is that most bang for the buck for the warfighter, for cybersecurity, and coming together to make those recommendations to our leadership so that they're not hearing this chorus of, my thing, my thing, my thing, but rather collectively, this is where we recommend investment.
Yeah. And so, Tony, I'm just going to add one more thing to that as we're reflecting on the conversation we're having here. The reason why we're moving to this capability portfolio idea and having a senior steering group is because there isn't a single belly button responsible for cybersecurity in the department. From a headquarters level perspective, even the fact that two of us are up here demonstrates that even at the secretariat level, it's a shared responsibility. And so the only way to get after this is to really work together and get everyone on the same page, aligned, unity of effort in this space.
So I think I would tend to agree, ma'am. The Department of Navy is a huge organization with many working parts that are trying to find that effectiveness and efficiency. So as we have already launched this initiative, what do you see as next? I know you held your first kickoff in December. Did you get the kind of feedback you wanted to get, and how do you think? What's tomorrow look like?
So just to give you kind of a sense of what we tackled in that first meeting, right? A broad range of topics that I hope to continue getting after. Everything from sort of current and immediate threats to Navy networks and how we're going to mitigate them, to looking at update on cyber ready, to improving our cyber incident response and damage assessment process. All right. So really a little bit of everything. I'm really looking forward to hearing how the partners who came to the meeting bring forward their issues of concern. Sometimes when you kick it off, we end up driving the agenda. I think we will know we have achieved success when partners are bringing their problems to this forum because they see it as a place where they can get resolution, that they can get buy-in and guidance and support for the issues that they're facing. So I would just say that's kind of where I think we're driving to next, is to make this something that is beneficial and people see results, because the Department of Defense has 1 million governance bodies, and a lot of times people are like, we just don't need one more. Yeah. We can drive this to a place where people want to come because they see goodness, they see results coming out of it. So I think that's what's next, is we had a kickoff. Now we have to deliver, right? We have to deliver on what we said we would do when it comes to streamlining that incident response and damage assessment process. We have to deliver updates on cyber ready. We have to deliver on zero trust frameworks for OT. So
Yeah, it also needs to be a forum where, you know, we talk a lot about in IT having a foot in what we're doing today, but having a foot in what's coming down the pike. And nothing could be more true of cybersecurity. The enemy gets a vote on when we have to pivot or do something new. And so I think Anne-Marie's right. We did have Admiral Clapperton in this particular session. We did not invite the fleet, and so that will be fixed in the next round. But we did have Admiral Clapperton, as representative of the fleet, talk about the cybersecurity posture today and the concerns that we have and that are going to drive change. In the next section, we'll talk about how do we, and the other piece that we brought to that meeting was we started talking about the importance of post-quantum resistant encryption and how we have to shape industry's activities in that space to make sure that what they're delivering or what they say is post-quantum resistant really will work for Navy missions. And so we're kicking off an effort with the DoD. We're pushing that effort with the DoD to create a team that's actually going to work with industry and do some of those things. So keeping people abreast of what's happening and why they should care will be a big part of it. And then the last thing, in our last DoD CIO meeting, we started talking about what does an ecosystem look like that is data level security, where we're encrypting data, we know who's accessing our data, zero trust principles, and we can have attribute-based access control on our data. Those are things that don't exist today really in our ecosystem broadly, and that will drive a strategic plan and then a bunch of activity, programs and resourcing to get us to that concept of how to manage cybersecurity.
I think one thing, speaking to a lot of industry partners here, that's really helpful as I get industry engagements is helping us to imagine what that future looks like. Sometimes we can be very driven in the fight tonight piece, and obviously there's an operational imperative to focus on that fight tonight. But even looking beyond the next FIDEP, right? Imagining what that data-centric future would look like, not just how to get there, but once we're there, what are we going to do with it, right? There's a lot of opportunity there for us in the department, and so I think this shared capability portfolio is a place to have those thought leadership discussions, but industry can also engage with us in helping us to imagine that future better.
All right. One more call. Hey, good opportunity to talk with the principal cyber advisor and the Department of Navy CIO. If you have any questions, you just want to move up and launch, let's hear what's on your mind in relationship to this topic.
Soul.
Go ahead.
Good afternoon, Dave Heath, NC TAMS PAC. As we continue to grow our architectures and expand our footprint and expand where the network goes to and who's utilizing it, we exponentially grow the number of devices that we have to manage. From NICTAM's perspective, we operate and maintain the majority of the Navy's networks. The number of networks have grown so much that it's becoming untenable for our sailors and our civilians and our contract workforce to keep up with the pace of doing patching, STIGs, compliance, scanning, and those things. Is there a plan to give us an overarching software-defined network capability or single pane of glass capability that will start to automate some of these compliance tasks to reduce the workload because our number of people that we have doesn't grow, and it's harder to retain the sailors, and it's hard to recruit civilians and contractors.
Yeah, so first things first, yes, the number of networks is untenable and needs to be addressed. And the Navy blueprint that was briefed yesterday at IT West by the N2 N6, that is one of their primary efforts, is to drive that reduction of networks. 100% agree. We have initiated software-defined networking on the IL5 side with flank speed. And that is showing that it can move to the tactical edge. And so we'll see more of that. We have another initiative about to kick off that will be for the warfighting environment. And that will be also software-defined and driven. Again, another effort or a byproduct of having the cybersecurity portfolio is, hey, as I mentioned in my opening remarks about the cloud ecosystem, everybody just went and bought cloud, built cloud environments. We didn't have a governance or a management process, or we didn't have a strategy of how we really wanted to manage cloud. By talking to the cyber operators, we know now how they want to defend cloud, and so now we have to drive our architecture to support that. If you talked to our cyber operators today, they would tell you fewer networks, right? Fewer networks, more robust tooling on the networks we have, better visibility. And so that has to drive where we are headed from an architecture perspective in the IT space. So got lots of smart people on my team who have been operators, who have worked in the cyberspace, and we are all thinking this way. Our PEO is thinking this way. Our fleet is thinking this way. We need to just drive and make it real as quickly as we can. That's hard because these networks had a purpose, and probably many of them still do have good purpose. But how do we transition into a more thoughtfully designed, purposefully designed ecosystem?
Right. And I heard, part of your struggle was the recruiting retention part. So I think certainly Jane and I see that from two different perspectives. Jane having the lead for the civilian cyber workforce, myself primarily focused on our uniform cyber operations force. Recruiting and retention is hard, right? We compete with everybody who's here on the floor today for that talent. So, looking at things like what recruiting incentives are we given, or what pay incentives on the civilian side, what educational opportunities are we offering, bringing the information warfare community out of the restricted line, right? How do we incentivize them month to month with their pay tied to maintaining certifications? That would be a step in the right direction too. So I think there's more that we can do there to help you on the recruiting and retention side as well.
Thank you very much.
Good question. All right, we could be.
Any more questions? Opportunities? If no more questions, before we close it out, I'm going to go to Ms. Anne Marie Schumann for her closing comments on this forum.
All right, I think I've probably talked about enough, so I will just say, thanks to everybody who helped to put this together, and Jane's team really has done a tremendous job putting together the Dawn CIO IT portion of West. So thanks to you and your team. Thank you for asking me to be here, and just continue to look forward, to working together on our shared portfolio.
Mutual Admiration Society. We are thrilled to have Ms. Schumann on the Department of Navy team. I see a bright future for us in this space, advocating together for the things that we need to get done. And again, I want to thank you all for bearing the noise, which is pretty untenable actually, from here, and listening to what we had to say. And I look forward to working with you all on solving the Navy's problems, or opportunities, excuse me.
Yes, I'd like to thank these two tremendous ladies for taking the opportunity to speak with us today. As was said yesterday, both Ms. Rathbun, Ms. Beavers, Admiral Thomas, General Carter, all talked about a sense of urgency. So I look forward to this initiative, given that there are all the problems. Again, thank you, great leaders today, and I want to thank everybody for attending. Have a great afternoon.